You know, some bands burn out, others just kind of fade away. But Jane's Addiction? They did something different. They engineered their own spectacular collapse over and over and over again. It's a story where their creative genius was maybe only matched by their talent for self-destruction. So, let's get into it. Let's explore the beautiful, chaotic architecture of Jane's Addiction.
And we're actually going to start at the end, because it is just so final. In 2026, guitarist Dave Navarro completely slammed the door shut on the band, calling a recent gig his least favorite in his entire 40-year career. I mean, wow. So how on earth did a band that literally changed music get to this point, a point of no return? To figure that out, we have to go all the way back to the beginning.
All right, let's rewind to the mid-1980s. The music scene in Los Angeles was a world of extremes. On one side, you had the whole spectacle of hair metal, and on the other, you had the super rigid hardcore punk scene. Jane's Addiction was basically born as a reaction against all of that. They were a mix of sounds that, at the time, nobody thought should go together.
And at the absolute heart of that mix was this incredible creative tension. So on one hand, you've got frontman Perry Farrell. He's this theatrical, flamboyant showman coming from a goth rock background. And on the other hand, you've got bassist Eric Avery, a quiet, brooding minimalist who is all about the stripped-down, bass-heavy sounds of bands like Joy Division. This constant push and pull, well, that became their secret weapon.
The rest of the classic lineup just kind of fell into place through people they knew. The drummer, Stephen Perkins, was actually dating Eric Avery's sister, and the guitarist, Dave Navarro, was a childhood buddy of both of them. And when you put the four of them in a room together, it was just this explosive, unclassifiable energy. It was part funk, part metal, part punk. It was all art.
So with this totally unique sound, of course, the major labels started sniffing around. The band ends up signing with Warner Bros., and as they head into the studio to record their masterpiece, Nothing Shocking, the very same friction that fueled their incredible art, well, that's when it started to tear them apart over money. Just look at this number, $300,000. You have to understand, for an alternative band that nobody had really heard of in 1986, this was a staggering, almost unheard of amount of money. The pressure was on, big time, and it immediately started to show the cracks in their foundation.
And this is where that first really big fracture happens. Perry Farrell argued that since he was the lyricist and the one with the vision, he deserved a 62.5% share of the publishing royalties. So as you can see, that left the other three guys to split up just a little over a third of the pie. The band actually broke up in the middle of the recording session over this. They eventually caved just to get the album finished, but it created this internal fracture that, honestly, never really healed.
But here's the ultimate paradox, right? While they're behind closed doors fighting tooth and nail over money, they are creating something absolutely revolutionary. And the critics? They got it immediately, calling them the true heirs to Led Zeppelin. They were making this monumental but also gritty and real art, all while the band itself was quietly falling apart. So by 1991, things had gotten pretty bad. The fighting, the drugs, it all reached a breaking point, and Jane's Addiction decided to break up. But Perry Farrell wasn't about to just let the band fizzle out. No way. Instead, he came up with this idea for a farewell tour that would, completely by accident, create the blueprint for the entire 90s alternative rock scene. I mean, just look at this lineup. Perry's goal was to, in his words, uncork the zeitgeist. And man, did he ever. He just smashed all these genres together. You had industrial music, rap metal, goth, hard funk, all sharing the same stage. It was basically a traveling circus for all the kids who felt like they didn't really fit in anywhere else. And it was a total revelation. But here's the thing you really need to get about Lollapalooza. It did way more than just say goodbye to Jane's Addiction. It built the entire infrastructure, the highway, for the alternative nation. It gave future superstars like Pearl Jam and Rage Against the Machine a massive, ready-made audience. It was a farewell party that somehow started a revolution. But of course, that revolution came at the cost of the band that started it all. After their historic breakup on that Lollapalooza stage, the story of Jane's Addiction just becomes this dizzying, exhausting cycle of side projects, tense reunions, and the same old conflicts. It's a pattern that would define them for the next 30 years.
And you can see that fundamental split perfectly in what they did next. Farrell and Perkins formed Porno for Pyros, which was much more commercial, psychedelic, and known for these big theatrical live shows. Meanwhile, Avery and Navarro created Deconstruction, a super dense, complicated, one-off art experiment that was so complex they never even toured it. It just highlights how different their artistic instincts really were.
And so the reunion merry-go-round begins. In '97, they did a relapse tour with Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers on bass. In 2003, they made a new record with Chris Chaney that had a more polished, modern sound. Eric Avery actually came back for a bit in 2008, but surprise, surprise, the old tensions with Perry flared up and he was gone again by 2010. The only constant was instability.
Which brings us all the way to 2024. And against all odds, it actually happened. The 4 original members announced a full reunion tour. This was the moment fans had been waiting on for decades. And as it turns out, it would also be their final, definitive implosion.
Just look at how fast it all fell apart. September 13th, 2024. Perry Farrell lunges at Dave Navarro right there on stage in Boston. Tour's over. Canceled. Just like that. By the next summer, the lawsuits were flying. The rest of the band sues Perry for assault. He countersues them for bullying. By December, they'd settled out of court, and on January 2nd, 2026, it was officially done. And this wasn't just some small disagreement we're talking about. This was a $10 million lawsuit. And that number alone tells you everything you need to know about how bitter and severe this final breakup really was. There was absolutely no coming back from that.
In the end, this is what was left. This sanitized, lawyer-approved farewell. They walked back some of the things they'd said earlier and gave a little nod to the band's legacy, but the real message was crystal clear. The book on Jane's addiction was officially and permanently closed.
So we're left with this one big question, aren't we? The very same friction that created their groundbreaking sound is the exact same thing that tore them apart, again and again. From the first fight over royalties to the final fight on stage, their entire story is one of creative combustion. It really makes you wonder. For a band like Jane's Addiction, was this beautiful, chaotic collapse the only way it could have ever ended?